Sexual energy is creation energy. And so if you take the power of that creative energy and put it towards, originally it's for making children, right? But if you're not creating a child, there are so many different things that you can create: a business, a job, art, music, you name it, you can create it. And so sexual alchemy is recognizing the negative aspect that society or we have been taught generationally, or maybe ideas that we have about sex, about the energetics of sex, about the desire that we all inherently have within us. And those are not bad things. How we use it, right? We want to talk about how we transmute that energy and how we use it and what we create from it.
Unleash the untapped potential within you as we dive fearlessly into the realms of healing, personal growth, self-love, and uncharted territories of the human experience. Join us as we navigate relationships, conquer career and business milestones, and explore the depths of spirituality. This isn't just a podcast, it's a manifesto for the resilient, the ambitious, the soul-searching women and men of today. Grab your coffee and let's dive in with Beyond the Surface. My loves, welcome back to another episode here on Beyond the Surface. And today I am joined by Lisa Beck, and we are diving into a full conversation around desires. We are starting off with sexual energetics, and I don't want you to be afraid hearing that. This is going to be such a liberating conversation to be a part of, and to also just be in the space of what it's like to really reconnect back to your desires. So let's dive in. Lisa, thank you first and foremost for joining me. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
I can't wait to dive in. Like I said, I binged your podcast, in preparation for this, and I'm in so alignment with many of your guests and everything you're talking about. So I think this is going to be a really fun conversation.
I agree. And my first thing that I was thinking about before we hit record was just like the piece around like sexual energetics. Like, how did that even land into your world? Because I feel like you're going to share a little bit. And of course, people just probably seeing your bio and whatnot, they're going to see like athletes. And like, where does sexual energetics come into this whole equation of your life?
Yes, I know. It's like so me. I
love it.
If you read my bio, you're gonna be like, what? But my whole life has been a journey, right? And so recently I've been really diving into like, what is my purpose? What is my mission? What am I here for? And what I'm getting back from the universe is to discover and rediscover who I am over and over and over again. And all these different hidden aspects of myself, because we are multidimensional beings. And so as I have dived into personal development, as I have expanded my consciousness, as I have really learned and come into my own spiritual gifts and really understanding the concept of consciousness and quantum physics and energy. Like, I feel energy, I sense energy, I read energy, and this has all been a personal exploration. Part of that has been really understanding and being called to divine sexual energy and understanding it from a sacred perspective, sacred sexuality. And in my own exploration, it was like, I have to teach this. I have to put this out there into the universe, and was really divinely guided to go in that route to help women understand their own sexual energy. It's probably why I'm wearing orange today, because that is our sacral chakra, right? And
Yes.
that's where our sexual energy comes from. But it's our creative life force energy. And so anything that we create comes from sexual energy. And then working with men too in this realm of sexual energy, and a lot for them and for women, it's really taking these paradigms that society has taught us is good or bad and flipping them on their head. And that's
Yeah.
what I love to do, is really taking what society says is like bad, and flipping it and be like, nope, this is a new perspective. This is how it can empower you.
Yeah, I love that. And I have like questions that I was thinking about too. But I want to, before we even dive into that aspect and just like these, I guess, like norms and whatnot, the whole language around society, I really want to, just from your own perspective, because sometimes I feel like we hear a lot of like words and things thrown around. And I'm just like, I'm kind of curious of just like in your experience or as you've been learning and going down this road, like what does sexual alchemy, what does like sexual energetics, like what does that actually like mean in like realistic terms, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. So alchemy means turning, transmitting something. So in the book The Alchemist, he turns like a metal into gold. So it's transitioning, changing form of something. So
Mm-hmm.
with sexual alchemy, what we're talking about is it's varied, but it can also, one aspect of it is something that we may experience as shameful or
Mm,
hidden or dark or negative or scary. Like any woman or man that is like, oh, I have a lot of sexual energy. Like a woman is called a slut, a man, sometimes is celebrated, but sometimes he feels shame because he doesn't know what to do with all this primal sexual energy that he has. And
yeah.
and so what it is empowering men and women to use that energy not just for intercourse, but in ways to fuel our life, so we have this fulfilling, abundant life, because sexual energy is creation energy. And so if you take the power of that creative energy and put it towards, well, originally it's for making children, right? But if you're not
Mm-hmm.
creating a child, there are so many different things that you can create: a business, a job, art, music, you name it, you can create it. And so sexual alchemy is recognizing the negative aspect that society or we have been taught generationally, or maybe ideas that we have about sex, about the
Yeah.
energetics of sex, about the desire that we all inherently have within us. And those are not bad things. How we use it,
Yeah.
right? We want to talk about how we transmute that energy and how we
Mm.
use it and what we create from it.
Yeah. I've been diving into alchemy and just so drawn to alchemy, especially from like the spiritual lens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm just having a moment where, you know, I had this thought a while ago come through, and it was just kind of, and I think in this moment I'm understanding it a little bit more,
Mm.
but I think in ways like we are all alchemists because we are all
Yes.
creators, and that's going to look so differently in in those that kind of are taking the role as being leaders or guides for to help those actually go through the process of alchemy. But in all ways, we are constantly taking something and turning it into something else. We are
Yes.
constantly taking, whether you want to call them negative emotions. I don't love to say that, but the more dense that we
Mm-hmm.
feel, those dense energies that we feel, you're constantly alchemizing that. You are constantly transforming that into something else. So in all ways, like we are just all alchemists. And I think it's
Yeah.
just yeah, it's just very powerful to understand that and to take that into your life and say, I can transform anything.
Yes.
And I feel like that's such a powerful statement to own, because in those moments where you're really going through something and it's challenging, like just having that in the back of your head, like I can transform this, like I can transform this into anything,
Yes.
is such a
Yes.
powerful thing, eh?
Super, super powerful. And one other thing I want to add that's like kind of dropping in, and my guides are like, make sure you say this about sexual alchemy, is that it's taking that sexual energy that is in our sacral chakra, right? If people aren't familiar with the chakra, like your lower belly or your sex organs, right? It's really intense right there. And pulling it up to your heart and opening up your heart space. So when you come into intimacy with your partner, it's just not this stuck energy where you're penetrated, right? But it's you're opening up your heart space, because the heart energy is 6 times more powerful than any energy anywhere else on our body. And so when we can come with our partner from a heart space and make love from that space, the power that we are emitting, the energy that we are emitting, or maybe you're not even having sex, but you're creating your business. And if you can come and bring that energy up to your heart space and create from that space, it's just 6 times, 10 times more powerful than any other place.
Yeah, I got chills hearing you say that. So thank you, guides, for the guidance there to say that. But my follow up to that too is like, what are ways in, especially in the moment, that you can move that energy?
Yeah, breath,
Mm,
presence, and breath. So it's very important. And also, I recognize hard to do
yes.
in any situation. So whether it's an intimate situation or not, to be fully present in that moment. Okay, we're just gonna take with your partner. Let's say you're getting rowdy and you're taking it to the bedroom. How often are you thinking, oh, I still have to do laundry, dishes haven't been done, right? Like, oh, I have this project due for work. You can't be focused on the pleasure and the act when your brain is elsewhere. And because orgasm, especially for women, happens in the brain, starts in the brain first. And so being fully present with your partner in that situation allows you to embody the sensations that are happening within you. And then a lot of us live in our body in fight or flight. And so we breathe from here up, and it's really shallow and it's quick and it's fast. And that is fight or flight. But if we can slow down our breath, if we can deepen our breath, we can move energy all around our body. Especially women have an easier time circulating their energy and can actually have energetic orgasms just by moving energy and using their breath to do that.
So powerful. And this doesn't feel related, but I'm gonna say it anyways, just because I had this experience yesterday. Usually, like, not always, but sometimes on my first day of my cycle, it's like I get a lot of cramps and whatnot. And so I found though that breath has, just being so intentional with my breath, has been so powerful to actually like alleviate the cramps. And I think, again, like, it doesn't feel fully related in this moment, but it's just, I think, the testament of very intentional breathing,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
power that it has.
Our breath is so powerful, and especially like what you did, drawing it down intentionally into your womb space, which helps to create more space. Because anytime we have our cycle, when we are, and it's also an energetic release, right? So it's getting rid of all of, maybe I don't like the word negative either, like you said, negative energy, but lower or denser energy. It's a way for us to purge, because as women, our womb space, it's a holding tank, right? So we can hold a lot in there, and especially through our ancestral line. And
Mm.
so the more we can be intentional and breathe and bring that breath down into our womb space creates a lot of room. And the intention is everything, right? If our thoughts are so powerful, if we want to think healing, or if we want to think love or high frequency or pleasure or joy, we can infuse that into our breath, which will circulate throughout our body.
Yeah. I just love how we just like got right going into into the beauty of this. But I do want to kind of circle back to the piece around kind of I think there's just I think there's just been in society like shame and whatnot, especially around this energy, this sexual energy, and just like desire and whatnot. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, what are some of those things that we've misunderstood, and like, what are some of those things that we do need to create a shift? And I feel like it kind of applied both men and women, but just your
Yeah.
perspective, yeah.
Yeah. And again, you're right. It applies to both men and women. The easiest way is to think that we are primal beings. There are aspects of our brain that are still in the caveman era. And
Mm,
that's just who we are. And if we recognize that, and I kind of laugh because I think everything can go back to penis and vagina. So, like, a man in caveman time frame, in our primal being, his only job was to hunt, right? And he had to be very penetrative with his hunt, singular focused, because that was
mm,
his job, how he provided safety, protection for his family, for the food. And he was very singular focused, very narrow minded. He had one job, he did it, came back, brought pleasure to the family, right?
yeah.
Whereas the women were the gatherers, they were multi-focused. They were also keeping track of all the children and the elders in the tribes. So their mind is all over the place. They are the gatherers. They have this womb space where they bring everyone
Mhm.
together. They're communicating, right? So their primal brain is working a lot differently. And in society, we've kind of like you said, shamed a lot of these aspects. So, like, for example, I like to use, we always say to, I don't like the word we always say. One common phrase is like, for a man, oh, you're thinking with your dick and you're not thinking with your
Yeah.
head. Well, if you think about it, a a penis is directive, it's clear, it knows what
Mhm.
it wants, it's like a
Yeah.
warrior, it's going after what it wants. And so I like to work with men, and if they're like hemming and hawing over a decision, I'm going to
Mhm.
ask them, which one do you want to take to the bedroom?
Mm.
Which one do you want to take to the bedroom over and over and over and over again? Because that is what you're primally drawn to. And so it's thinking with your penis, but thinking with it in not a shameful way, but in an empowering and enriching, a desire, a turned on way. Like,
Yeah.
what turns you on? And same thing for women. It's like, it's okay to be turned on. It's okay to
Yeah.
have this energy and to feel good in
Yeah.
your body. Like, we women in particular have so much body shame. And if you ask
Mhm.
men, they see women as goddesses. Goddesses. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you look like. They're like, I don't see that at all. I am singular focused.
Yeah.
You are a goddess I want inside of you. And whereas women are
Yeah.
like, oh, my arms or my hair or my legs or I weigh too much, my stomach, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's recognized that women, to be embodied, we have a natural magnetism to us. We're going to
Mm.
magnetize men to us, and we don't really have to push and to chase because we're naturally a magnetic woman.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And I don't know why in this moment too. It was actually like making me emotional to think about it, but to think about for example, if you think about if you have a man in your life or, but thinking about the men in your life and imagine what it would look like for just a moment to see the way they look at us
Mhm.
as women, especially. And I think that comes for me specifically, lots of like challenging times growing up, and even still to this day, of just like the body shame and, just like not feeling good enough and all that stuff,
Mhm.
and just judging, right, like judging ourselves and the way we look and these little aspects. But to, I think, just like have these moments of like, I to witness what I look like from my husband's perspective
Yes.
is like,
Yes.
wow, like that would be incredible if we could actually like, let's switch places for a moment, just so I can see that, because I think we would see ourselves totally different with so much love.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And it's like, I think of humans as diamonds, right? And we only see one facet of the diamond, but
Yeah.
from a 10,000-foot view, people can see all facets of the diamond. And it's the same for men and women. Like, if women knew how much men desire to
Mm.
provide and protect and please a woman, like that is their only desire, is that. And women,
Yeah.
if men recognize for women, women just want to pour their love onto their man and show how much they appreciate what they do for them at our core. Right now there's a lot of different layers in between that, and trauma, and
Of course.
ancestral DNA. But at our core, the masculine and the feminine just wants to like be in awe of this warrior god man, right? And
Yeah.
then the man just really wants to worship the goddess.
Yeah. And I know that's something that you kind of talked about, was like a little bit of this like polarity of like the masculine and feminine. And I see that. I see that in ways, if we could kind of strip layers back, like
Yeah.
I think we can see to the essence, like as a woman, this is something that you desire. And as a man, like you can see that that is something that men desire to do and to be, for their women. And I see that, and I'm like also pondering just like how we've gotten, I guess, like so far from that. And
Yeah.
and the impact that that has on our relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and the disconnect that comes from all of that too.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. Everything is kind of like a pendulum, right? So in the
Yeah,
50s and before, women didn't have a lot of rights, right? I mean,
exactly.
we could barely vote. We've only been able
Yeah.
to vote for like 100 years. So there was the female empowerment, the feminist movement, so women could be more relevant and hold higher positions. And so women went from here, and then we swung the pendulum all the way here. So me growing up in the 80s and 90s was taught, you can do anything a man can do. You can be a man. You can, whatever they can do, you can do, which is
Hmm.
great. It really helped me be like, oh, I can do whatever I want to do. And what that did a lot for women is, oh, so I can be the boss, the CEO, and the mother, and take care of myself. Well, you can't do all of that perfectly, right? And
Mm,
so a lot of women have suffered from burnout because they're
yeah.
all of that is essentially a masculine energetic, and
Hmm.
men have a lot of masculine energy, and so they can do and do and do and do and do. Like, you may look at a man and you're like, you never sit down, you never rest, because that is his natural energetic, is to do and to do, whereas a feminine energetic is rest and receive. But if you're a
Yeah.
CEO and you're a boss woman and you're a mom and you're head of household and you're doing all of these things because you were told, right, like, independent woman, I can do and have and be anything. Yes, you can. And it's learning that that is putting you as a feminine energy into a lot of masculine energy, which is going to cause a lot of burnout because
Yeah.
it's out of harmony. So it's not
Yeah.
saying you can't have any of that. It's saying you have to find the balance between your relationship
Mm,
and within yourself. And polarity, which is a lot of sexual energy in a relationship, is a masculine energy and a feminine energy. And it doesn't matter male or female, it's just masculine and feminine. And that's a law
Mm-hmm.
of the universe. That's what creates polarity. That's what creates magnetism. But if you have a woman who is constantly in her masculine energy, then it takes that sexual attraction and just brings it way down. And same thing if you have a man who's constantly in his feminine energy or childlike energy, because a lot of times you see women who are take care, mother their partner, the man, and then the man becomes a child always being taken care of and not a leader and not making a lot of the decisions or going with the flow, then that also lowers the polarity, the sexual attraction in a relationship as well.
I had this like little aha moment because then it's also, then we understand through this is also, when we have our desires, and think of your desires as, the dreams, the goals, all those things, those are all of our desires. And as women, I think I like, part of me is like, that's just so focused is just the women aspect, but like being swinging so far into the masculine and wanting to do all the things, yeah. And it's also no wonder that, then we feel like in a way it's kind of like we have to choose like the career or the kids and having a family. There's that aspect. But also what you were saying about there, we always need the masculine and feminine. So at the end of the day too, it's like then noticing why we're actually not attracting the desires that we want. When we talk about, why isn't this happening, or why am I not able to manifest this? I think this just added maybe a little layer for me of awareness of just, the masculine energy. And if you're so into your masculine and you're constantly almost like doing, when are you receiving, which is more feminine energy? At what point do you actually allow what you desire to come to you?
Yes. How are you magnetizing that desire too?
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And so it's that balance within you, as within, so without. So that balance within you is going to be reflected most of the time in the relationship too.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. And so many, like, I think just pieces coming to puzzle, but I was curious too, as women, but also as men, it applies too. How can we connect more to our desires?
Yes. Well, the easiest way, first of all, is recognizing what do you not desire. Sometimes that's the easiest way, right? Is to know, oh yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that. Sometimes asking people what they desire, it's almost too broad, too big of a question. And so I always start with, well, what do you not desire? And then I also ask, how do you want to feel? Because that can help us to manifest our desires. So if you want to feel safe, okay, what is that? And I say safe because women want to feel safe within a relationship. Safe looks like trust. Safe looks like a man being consistent. Safe looks like a man being committed. Safe looks like a man communicating. Safe looks like maybe a man taking the leadership role. So it's defining a lot of times the feelings that you want. Maybe you desire fulfillment in your career. Well, what does fulfillment look like for you? What does it feel like for you? It feels like wanting to serve your particular medicine. It looks like showing up every day with joy. It looks like you're receiving as much as you're giving. And so a lot of times we set accolades like, oh, it's making six figures, or it's landing this talk, or it's writing this book, or it's A, B, C. But those are just markers when really what we're desiring is an emotion, is a feeling.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, because I feel like at some point, and maybe at times, it becomes, once you gain this clarity around like, okay, now this is like what I desire, I feel like oftentimes there still ends up being this like disconnect unless you're still I think we all go through phases where
Yeah.
we are so deeply connected to our desires, and we're in this place where, that life force energy from our sacral is just like it's in that phase. And then, we're cyclical beings. I think no matter what, men and women, we still are cyclical. So, you're gonna have periods and phases in your life where you're so deeply connected to your desires, and that life force energy is really bringing things to life. And then sometimes there isn't that energy. And I think that's where we really struggle, is when it's like, but I have all these desires and, and nothing.
Yeah.
And then there's still some kind of disconnect. So I'm curious, in just maybe from like your experience and whatnot, like how have you reconnected back to that like creative life force energy when you feel like there might have been that disconnect?
Yeah. Oh, I love, what a great question. I think it's multi-layered, right? Because we're looking at, there could be so many different aspects, like what is unprocessed in our energetic field. Is there some
Mm,
trauma that is there? Is there some fear? Are there some trapped emotions? What is in our somatic? What is in our
mm,
body? Because our body is a very big barometer. So if we notice that, like, ooh, I just don't have those desires that I used to, so that is telling you something. And then it's like the uncovering the journey of, what is it speaking to me? Maybe
mm,
you've learned whatever lesson that you've needed to learn with this particular desire, and it's no longer a desire because it's not relevant for your life or where you are in your life at that time,
yeah.
right? Like, I used to love to go out, and now I'm like, yeah, that's just not part of my life anymore. But that was a big
Yeah.
desire of mine,
Yeah.
right? So it's looking at that aspect. It's also looking at, physically, for women and our bodies, our hormones are changing
Mm,
at all times, different phases of our life, different phases of our cycle, if we have children or not children, and that can change our desires too. So it's looking at our expectations of, are my expectations realistic for where I am in my life,
mm,
right? Like, what you could accomplish in your 20s, when you had less responsibilities probably than in your
mhm.
40s, 30s, 40s, or 50s, it's going to look different. And so it's giving us permission of, like, am I really attached to this desire because of old beliefs and old patterns and where I was at that period in my life? Or does this desire still really ring true to me? So, and we can have different
Mm,
desires in different areas of our life as well. And so it's allowing us to explore and stay curious and ask ourselves why. And I think that's one big part, not I think, I know, I'm working on changing my
mhm.
language. That's one big aspect of my life, is following my desires, and again, discovering and rediscovering who I am, and is this desire still relevant in my life? And
Mm,
if it's not, letting it go and being okay with letting
yeah.
it go, not feeling like I failed somehow because I no longer desire this.
Mm, yes. I'm just going to like underline everything that you just said, because how true is that? And we are constantly evolving. And I have said this like time and time again, like I want to be on that train where I am constantly evolving, constantly like just in motion.
Yeah.
And that really does require, I guess, in ways, like for some reason the word like almost like resilience comes up, because I think the piece around like letting go is not always easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
um Especially when, and that's why it's, constantly checking in with ourselves is really important, right? Of just the aspect of like, is this, that's such a good question around like, is this desire that I have attached to some like other belief, or,
Yes.
and if that is the case, being okay and not judging it that is the case, and just
Yeah.
allowing yourself to move forward and be able to create space for a new desire. Because the
Yeah.
more that you're just keeping the old stuff that like no longer fits, you're not creating any more space for the new desires that are
Yeah.
waiting, almost like in the atmosphere. They're kind of like waiting for you to like create space for it, so that it can actually like come to you, and being that magnetism, so it can come to you to manifest and be in your world. But sometimes we're just so focused and we're just like looking in the rear view mirror, and we're not looking ahead and what's ahead of us or in front of us. Um, and that's where a lot of like those beliefs and those aspects sometimes we're just clinging so hard onto, and it just requires us to have that space to actually be curious of the thoughts that we have, the beliefs that we have, the desires that we have. Like, where does
Yeah.
this desire actually come from? Is it true? And also, I think in ways like what I was thinking about too is just also setting ourselves up for success as well in ways, because for example, like the stage or phase that I'm in now that I've just gotten married is kind of like thinking about, right, like what's our plan for children, and like when do we want that? Not that we're rushing to that, but
Mhm.
just the conversations now are just like, okay, what are some of the things that we desire to do before we have children? And
Yeah.
then also, in just my world of building my business, it's like, okay, now how can I build my business in a way that's also going to support me when that comes
Yeah.
into when that comes in, like things are going to look differently. And I think we can plan and also know that things might not always go to plan, right? There's a little bit of that, right? Some of us need that plan, need a little bit of preparation, and doing what we can to just feel safe.
Yep.
And then also know that when it arises, like, we have enough like confidence and trust in ourselves that regardless, we'll also be able to handle it in those moments too. But I think the setting ourselves up for success is a really important piece too.
Absolutely. Especially as you talked about in relationships and knowing what your partner desires and what you
Mm.
desire. I like to consider relationships like a triangle, and there's three aspects to it. So, partner one, partner two, and then at the top is the relationship. And so, asking yourself and your partner and having this conversation, how am I giving to myself? How am I giving to my
Mm.
partner? How am I giving to the relationship?
Ooh.
And that triangle with your partner, nothing is in the middle of that triangle. Pets, not children, not work, not other family members. This is your
Mm.
sacred
Mhm.
triangle and relationship, because if we allow other entities, energies
Yeah.
within that, then that's just another layer that can cause a weakness in the foundation. So if we want to be a strong unit, for future children, for our aging parents, for our career, we have to make sure that this triangle is the most solid and that we know what we desire within our relationship. And so that creates that solid partnership, moving forward into other aspects of your life. I apologize if you hear my dog barking right now.
It's all good. Just wants to be a part of the
Yeah.
conversation too.
Oh, God. Does he ever? Yes.
um I really love that perspective and the way that you look at it, and it kind of solidifies in a sense too. We had to go through like marriage classes before our before getting married, because we were doing it through a church. And I don't remember the specifics, but I do remember this essence around just like you two are coming together.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what, when you do have children, like there still is going to be you two and your
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And I think, obviously, I'm not at the stage yet where I have kids, but I feel like in just witnessing other relationships, like it's easy to get caught up in, I
Yes.
think, the children
Yes.
aspect, and where
Yes.
they take the lead and the
Yes.
control, and not control, but you know what I mean? It's just like
Mm-hmm.
they're the sole focus, and
Yeah.
everything is put into them. And
Yeah.
of course, these are living beings that need that. But there is the aspect of like not forgetting about you and the relationship, and
Yes.
feel like it's about this balance, that this dance, I think too, that's a learning, right?
It's a learning. Yeah. Another aspect of relationships that I really love, and I have people really ask themselves this question, is when you walk through the door at the end of the day, what type
Mm.
of an environment do you want to walk into? And who do you need to be to create that environment? So let's say you worked out of the house and you are coming home and you want to feel peace and calm and love within your home environment. That's awesome. What kind of energy are you bringing into that space? And so if you are worked up from work or you had some
Mm,
tough meetings, like what do you need to do to get rid of that energy before you come home? Do you need to work out? Do you need to go have a cocktail with friends? Do you need to meditate? Do you need to run around the block or just run an errand or sit in your car and for a little bit? Like, and
yeah.
even if someone works from home, right? And this is so hard, I think, working from home. How do you shift out
Yeah.
of the boss or the right the work mode and into home mode,
Mm, hmm.
right? Like, and so
Yeah.
that is because when you work from home, you can always be working. But you
Yeah.
want to think about what type of environment that you want to create in your home, in your sacred space. And can you create your office space as a separate container for
Yeah.
your relational space for your
Hmm.
home? So because they're
Yeah.
different energies.
100%. And I will say, just from, I think over the last year and couple years of really being intentional with this in my own home, in my own space, in my own relationship, is that communication
Yeah.
is the number one thing in all of this.
Yes.
Like, hands down. And it's the communication, it's from both ends. It's you being able to communicate what it is that you need, and then
Mm-hmm.
also being able to receive from the other end. Because it's not just about us, right? Especially
Right.
when we're in a relationship, it's not just me, me, me. Although sometimes we make it me, 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 because that's just ego and that's just us
Yeah.
as humans.
Yeah.
And but when you're in relationship, it's like this agreement to just being open and honest, and allowing that truth, the space for the truth. And I think that has, I've witnessed it personally just in my relationship, especially over the last year, is just like the little things, like, you know, talk about just like, communicating of like, I would just love for like the dishes to be done. And I'm like, wow. And just
Yeah.
noticing the shift when it is and when it isn't. And also, speaking about the energy, one tool that I've really dove into over the last like 4 years now, maybe, is human design. And
Yeah.
human design, knowing mine and then also knowing my partners, is huge, especially because I have an emotion, I'm assuming human
Yep.
design. I have an emotion open solar plexus. And so he's got a defined solar plexus. So when he comes in riled up from work on a conversation and just riled up, I'm like, help,
Yeah.
help.
Yes. Yes.
So, it's just having the hard conversation in those moments of just, please don't come home on the phone. Please, it's just
Yes.
these little things. And then you make that commitment to
Yeah.
each other. And
Yeah.
that's what about being in a relationship is, you make the commitment of being so conscious of the, oh, they don't appreciate this, I'm going to do better at this. And
Yeah.
of course there's going to be moments and whatnot, but again, it's just that always continuous piece around like continuing and striving again to always be better.
Yeah. And that everything is circling back, right? It goes back to knowing what we desire and
Yeah.
knowing what we want and not letting, and like you said, communicating, not letting it fester and build and build and build. All of a sudden you're like a volcano and you're like, "Wah!" Right
Yeah.
onto your partner. They're doing that onto you and you're like, where the heck did that come from? All I did was flush the toilet wrong or something, right? Because it's always something little that is like so much bigger.
Yeah.
But it comes down to that respect and that trust of your relationship and respect of the
Hmm.
other person, and knowing that their journey has been completely different than yours, and we can't
Yeah.
expect them to see through our lens because they haven't lived our life. And having that compassion and that empathy for their journey and encouraging them to work on themselves as you work on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, so good. And so many different aspects and pieces. And one of my last like questions that I always love to just ask every single person is just, if you were to like instill, like if you were to give like one piece of advice or just words of wisdom, not even advice, but words of wisdom from just your life experience, like what feels true to leave right now for those that are tuning in and listening to this episode?
I love this question, and I love reminding people that we are multifaceted and multi-passionate and multi-dimensional beings and have many gifts and many talents, and your job is like my purpose to discover and rediscover and discover over and over again excuse me, what makes you you? What do you
Mm,
desire? What do you love? What brings you joy and passion? Because the more we can live in that desire, in that passion, in that joy frequency, the more fulfilling our life is going to be, the more magnetic we're going to be, the more people of that same frequency we will bring into our life. And so your only job is to know who you are, the ins and the outs, and
mhm.
rediscover that every day, every stage of your life, because like you said, it's cyclical and it's going to bob and weave and things are going to change and you're going to become different people in different stages of your life.
So good. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so
Yeah,
grateful for this conversation, and especially too because it's just a piece of the puzzle that I've been wanting to have for so long is this conversation, and a big part of who we are has a lot to do with our desires, and our desires also is sexual energetics, and I'm just so grateful to you for the journey that led you here to talking about and just doing this work with sexual energetics and being able to just come here and be in conversation, and I'm just so appreciative of it because I think it's a conversation that we just shouldn't shy away from having. There's less shame, less judgment of ourselves for the desires that we have.
absolutely. Yes, the more we can talk about and own and harness our sexual energy, our life force energy, our creative energy that we all have inside of us, the less shame and the more healing we can do around that, the better we will be as humans.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to leave a review and continue the conversation with me over on social media. And we'll see you in the next episode.